Welcome back. In this video, we'll be covering solutions to the second part of the Objects and Arrays exercise. The first thing we need to do is write the command to add the language go to the end of the languages array. We know that we use the push method to add items to the end of an array, so all we need to do is access the languages property inside the programming object. We do that by using programming.languages. So let's call the push method on the languages property using programming.languages.push and pass in the string go to the push method. We can now see that the languages array contains the string go. For the next question, we need to change the difficulty property to the value 7. So let's access the difficulty property using programming.difficulty and assign it to 7. That looks good. For the next question, we need to remove the jokes key from the programming object. I don't know why anybody would want to do this, but here we go. To remove keys in an object, we use the delete keyword. So let's delete programming.jokes. We can now look at the programming object and see that it's joke-free. Now we need to add a new key called isFun to the programming object and give it a value of true. Before we do this, let's remind ourselves about something important about objects. Right now, what is the value of programming.isFun? If we try to access that value, what will JavaScript return to us? We can see it actually returns undefined. So what you always should remember is that properties on objects that do not exist will always return undefined. They will not return an error. Now that we see that, let's set the value of programming.isFun to true. Now we can see that this property exists and has a value of true. For the next question, we need to use a loop to iterate through the languages array and console.log all of the languages. Since we're iterating over an array, let's use a for loop and loop through the programming.languages array. Once again, we'll make a variable called I and set it equal to 0. We'll then loop as long as I is less than the length of the languages array inside the programming object. And finally, let's increment I by 1 after each iteration. Inside of the loop, let's console.log whatever the value of I is inside the languages array inside the programming object. For the next question, we need to console.log all of the keys in the programming object. Since we're iterating over an object, we need to use a for in loop. So let's make a variable called key, and for each value of key inside of the object, let's console.log that value. We can see that the key variable we just created refers to each key in the object. Finally, let's console.log all of the values in the object. This one might be a bit tricky because we need to access the values in an object using a different notation. Remember that we can access values in an object using dot notation or array bracket notation. Pause the video now and see if you can remember the differences between them. When we know exactly what the value of a key is inside of the object, we should always use dot notation. But when we need to evaluate an expression, we should always use the array bracket notation. Since the order of a for in loop is not guaranteed, we don't know exactly the value of each key in the object at every iteration. Therefore, we need to use array bracket notation. So let's iterate over the object with a for in loop. But instead of using dot notation, we'll console.log the value of the object at the specific key that we're at. After running this a few times, notice that the order is different each time. If you were not able to solve these, make sure you try them again. This exercise is crucial for your understanding of JavaScript fundamentals. Watch the video again, try the exercises again, and push yourself to figure out different ways to solve these problems. Good luck.